Do you know that the person quietly planning to betray you may very well be the same person you poured your heart into saving, the person you stayed awake through countless nights to listen to, the person you kept yielding to, the person you forgave again and again? And while you were reaching out your hand to pull them from the abyss of their own life, behind your back they may already have been hiding a knife, waiting for the day they could drive it into you. This is not a rare story. It is a cruel pattern that very few people are willing to face directly. We grow up believing that kindness will be repaid with loyalty, that the more we give, the more we will receive in return. But the philosopher, Arthur Schopenhauer, one of the greatest minds in history when it came to understanding human nature, would throw a bucket of cold water straight onto that innocence. Because kindness without boundaries can sometimes become the very spark that ignites betrayal. And today, we are going to uncover that painful but necessary truth together, so that you no longer have to pay for being too good to the wrong person, with the loss of your own peace. Part 1. They love your value, not you. There is a truth that very few people dare to say out loud, and that is this: not everyone who enters your life truly cares about who you are. Some people simply love what they receive from you. They love the way you always listen without judging. They love the way you are always there when they need you. They love the stability you bring into the chaos of their lives. They love that whenever they call, you always answer. Whenever they need money, you always find a way to help. Whenever they are wrong, you are always the first one to forgive. And as long as you continue giving in this way, the relationship appears perfect. They call you their best friend, their strongest support, the only person they can truly trust. But that is not affection for who you are. It is dependence on what you provide. And there is an extremely thin line between those two things, a line most of us never recognize until it is too late. Because your kindness, in an unintended and deeply ironic way, may have quietly nurtured the very people who know only how to drain your energy without ever intending to give anything back. They did not come to you because of who you are. They came to you because you were always available. And that availability, something you once considered a virtue to be proud of, is precisely what can make you the perfect target for one-sided relationships. Think back for a moment. Have you ever wondered why a friend always comes to you whenever they are struggling, yet disappears without a trace when you are the one who needs someone to listen? Have you ever noticed that every conversation between the two of you somehow revolves around their problems, while no one ever asks about what you are going through? That is not random thoughtlessness. It is a pattern formed, in part, by the way you have taught them to treat you. Because every time you give in without asking for anything, every time you sacrifice without speaking up, you unintentionally send the message that your needs matter less than theirs. And human beings, whether we like to admit it or not, have a tendency to take advantage of what is given too easily. The most painful part is not being used. It is the moment you realize this truth too late, after you have spent years nurturing a relationship you believed was sincere, only to discover that it was nothing more than a disguised transaction, one in which you were always the giver, and they were always the receiver. And the moment you change that role, the moment you dare to say no, dare to establish boundaries, dare to prioritize yourself even once, everything may collapse immediately. The mask of kindness they once wore to maintain the relationship with you can fall away without mercy, and you may suddenly witness an entirely different person, someone cold, irritated, even angry, simply because you are no longer providing what they have grown accustomed to receiving. They will say that you have changed. They will say that you have become selfish. They will say that you are no longer the person they once knew. But the truth is exactly the opposite. You have not changed. The only thing that changed is that you are no longer as useful to them as you once were. And when your usefulness disappears, the affection they showed you, the affection you once believed was genuine, may disappear with it. This is where you must learn to distinguish between two kinds of people in your life. On one side are those who stay because of who you are. They care about you, even when you have nothing left to give. They remain, even when you refuse to help. They still ask how you are doing, even when they need absolutely nothing from you. On the other side are those who stay only because of what they receive. They disappear the moment the flow of benefits is cut off. They criticize you the moment you stop serving their needs. They turn their backs the moment you are no longer a useful tool in their lives. Recognizing this difference is not meant to make you suspicious of everyone around you. It is meant to teach you to observe actions instead of believing words alone. Words are easy to speak. Anyone can say they appreciate you. Anyone can say they care about you. But actions are much harder to disguise. Look at how someone treats you when you have nothing left to give them. Look at how they react when you refuse a request. Look at how they treat people who cannot offer them anything of value. Because that is where their true character is revealed, not in the version they show you when they need something from you. And once you learn this lesson, you will no longer feel the same pain when someone leaves after you stop giving, because you will understand that they were never truly there for you in the first place. They were there for what you could provide, and once that was gone, they no longer had a reason to stay. Part 2. The paradox of gratitude. From indebtedness to hatred. There is a psychological paradox that very few people expect, and that is this. Sometimes, the person you help the most becomes the person who resents you the most. It sounds irrational, but this is actually one of the most common and cruel psychological mechanisms in human relationships. Gratitude, when it is not processed in a healthy way, does not always lead to appreciation. Sometimes, it turns into a burden, an invisible debt that the person receiving the help does not know how to repay. And when someone feels that they owe too much and have no way to restore the balance, they may begin to feel humiliated. They may begin to feel small. They may begin to feel weak and powerless in the presence of the person who helped them. Imagine that you are going through the most difficult period of your life, and someone appears and helps you through all of it. They give you money. They give you their time. They give you advice. They give you emotional support. At first, you feel deeply grateful. You tell yourself that you will never forget what this person has done for you. But over time, every time you see them, you do not only remember the help they gave you, you also remember the weakest moment of your own life, the moment when you could not take care of yourself, the moment when you had to depend on someone else just to survive. Gradually, the presence of the person who helped you no longer brings warmth. Instead, it becomes a constant reminder of your own failure. This is when the human mind begins to operate in a strange and contradictory way. In order to avoid confronting that feeling of humiliation every day, our minds may begin searching for a way to remove the source of that discomfort. And that source becomes the very person who helped us, not because they necessarily did anything wrong, but simply because their presence is living evidence of the weakness we desperately want to forget. And the easiest way to erase that evidence, unconsciously and sometimes cruelly, is to diminish the value of the help they gave us, to search for faults in the person who helped us, or even to turn against them and attack them. You may have witnessed this in real life. A close friend whom you once helped with everything you had suddenly begins speaking badly about you behind your back. A relative whom you once lent money to during a difficult period suddenly avoids you and becomes irritated whenever they see you. A coworker, whom you once protected from the consequences of their mistakes, suddenly becomes the person who betrays you at work. And you ask yourself why. Why would someone you treated so well turn against you so ruthlessly? The answer may lie in this very psychological mechanism. Your help, even though it came from pure goodwill, may have unintentionally become a mirror reflecting their own failure and helplessness. And rather than look into that mirror every day, they choose to break it. They choose to erase the emotional debt by destroying the relationship with the very person who gave them what they needed, even if doing so means betraying their own benefactor. What you need to understand here is not that you should stop helping other people. It is that the way you help someone can be just as important as whether you help them at all. There is an enormous difference between helping someone in a way that preserves their dignity and helping them in a way that makes them feel inferior, small, and completely dependent on you. When you help quietly, without showing off, without repeatedly reminding them of everything you have done, and without making them feel that they owe you for the rest of their lives, that help is far less likely to turn into resentment. But when your help comes with constant reminders, constant references to your sacrifices, and repeated messages that they could never have survived without you, that is when you may begin planting the seeds of future resentment, even if that was never your intention. It must also be said clearly that this resentment is not always entirely the fault of the person receiving the help. Sometimes, it comes from the way society has taught us that needing help is a sign of weakness, that strong people are supposed to overcome every difficulty on their own, without depending on anyone else. With beliefs like these buried deeply inside us, anyone who has ever needed help may carry a hidden sense of shame, a feeling they do not want to acknowledge, and the person who helped them may, without intending to, become the target of that shame. So when you help someone, and they later become distant or even hostile toward you, do not immediately blame yourself and assume that you must have done something wrong. Understand that sometimes your help, even when it came from the most sincere love and goodwill, can become something another person does not have the emotional strength to face. That does not automatically mean you were wrong to help. It simply reflects one of the complicated and contradictory aspects of human nature that we must learn to understand and accept, rather than carrying guilt or pain with us for the rest of our lives. Part 3. The Mistake of the Savior. Now let me ask you a question that you may never have honestly asked yourself before. Why are you always the one who steps forward to help? Why are you always the one who listens? Why are you always the one willing to sacrifice your time, your energy, and even your own peace in order to solve other people's problems? The answer most of us usually give is that we are kind, that we care, that we cannot simply stand by and watch someone suffer without doing anything. But there is a deeper answer, one that not everyone has the courage to face. Sometimes, we help other people not entirely for their sake, but partly for our own, because being needed gives us a sense of importance, a sense of worth, a sense that our lives have meaning when we are the ones solving problems for others. This is not an accusation. It is a psychological truth that many people carry within themselves without ever realizing it. Some people grow up in environments where love is given only when they do something useful, only when they meet other people's expectations, only when they become the person who solves problems. From that experience, an unconscious belief begins to form within them. They come to believe that their value exists only when they are helping someone, and that if there is no one left to save, no one left who needs them, then they themselves become meaningless. And it is precisely this belief that unconsciously drives them to seek out people who need rescuing, unbalanced relationships, and individuals who are drowning in difficulty. Because only when they are beside people like this do they feel valuable. Only then do they feel important. Only then do they feel that their lives have a purpose. But this is the most dangerous trap of everything we have discussed, because when you search for your own value through rescuing other people, you unintentionally place your happiness and your peace in the hands of people who may have no intention of changing. You keep giving, you keep sacrificing, you keep trying to repair problems that were never yours to solve, while the person you are desperately trying to save may not even want to save themselves. And the result is that you become exhausted. You become wounded. You lose yourself in the process of trying to become the hero in someone else's story. Remember this. You cannot change someone who does not want to change. You cannot heal a wound when the person carrying it does not want it to heal. You cannot give someone awareness if they have no desire to develop it. No matter how deeply you love them, no matter how much you sacrifice, there are battles that only the person living through them can fight for themselves. Your role is not to carry that battle in their place. Your role is simply to stand beside them, to support them within the limits of what you can reasonably give, and to know when it is time to stop. Learning when to stop is not a betrayal of your kindness. It is an act of wisdom and maturity. True kindness does not mean giving until you are completely depleted. It means knowing how to give within healthy limits, knowing how to protect your own energy so that you can continue being a good person over the long term, instead of completely burning yourself out for the sake of a few toxic relationships. And the most important thing you need to engrave into your heart is this. You are not obligated to sacrifice your own peace in order to prove that you are a good person. You do not need to sacrifice your mental well-being, your time, and your happiness simply so that other people will recognize you as generous. Your value is not measured by the number of people you have rescued. It is not measured by how much of yourself you are willing to sacrifice. Your value exists independently. It exists even when you do nothing for anyone else. It exists even when you refuse a request for help. It exists even when you choose to prioritize yourself first. Learning this is the first step toward breaking free from the cycle of becoming a savior for people who do not actually want to be saved. It is the first step toward building relationships based on mutual respect, rather than one-sided dependence, a form of dependence that, in the end, leads only to pain and betrayal. So what is the question we should ask ourselves here? Does this mean we should stop being kind? Does it mean we should close our hearts and never help anyone again in order to avoid being hurt this way? The answer is no, absolutely not. Because if you allow betrayal to turn you into someone cold, indifferent, and emotionally closed off, then that becomes the final and most ruthless victory the person who betrayed you could ever achieve. They would not only have taken away your trust, they would also have taken away the good person you once were. And that is something you should never allow to happen. What you need to change is not your humanity, but the naivety in the way you give your kindness. Do not slam the door of your heart shut against the entire world. Instead, learn to put a lock on that door, a lock that only you have the right to control. You decide who deserves to come inside, who should remain on the front porch and receive only ordinary courtesy, and who should never be given a key to reach the deepest parts of your soul. You can still be generous. You can still be someone who is willing to reach out and help when another person truly needs it. But this time, you do it with your eyes wide open, with awareness, and with the ability to observe actions instead of believing words alone. You give, not because you expect gratitude in return, not because you need to prove your worth, but simply because giving is consistent with the values you choose to live by. And when you no longer want to give, you stop without feeling guilty, because genuine kindness should never require you to burn yourself alive just to keep someone else warm. Remember this. The betrayal you experienced is not proof that you were foolish for trusting. It is not proof that you were weak because you gave too much. It is simply a lesson, an expensive but necessary lesson that teaches you how to distinguish kindness from excessive leniency, compassion from self-destruction, and loving another person from losing yourself in the process. And from this day forward, you will still continue to help. You will still continue to love. But you will choose more carefully. You will give your energy more consciously. And above all, you will never again allow your inner peace to become the price you pay, simply to prove to someone that you are a good person, because you do not need to prove that to anyone except yourself. If what we have shared today has touched some part of your own story, take a little time to tell it. Have you ever been betrayed by the very person you devoted yourself to helping? What helped you rise again after that pain? Share your story in the comments. Perhaps those very words will become a light guiding another wounded soul somewhere out there, someone who is feeling completely alone in their pain. And do not forget to subscribe to the channel so that together, we can continue this journey of understanding the deepest hidden corners of human psychology.